Welcome to CityCast Denver. I'm Bree Davies, and here's what Denver's talking about. So today we're talking about the big, complicated city council at-large race, a behemoth in the ski industry's potentially very convenient move to downtown, and more on the 4 a.m. bar hours proposal. Westward editor emeritus Patty Calhoun, hello.
Hello.
We're going to start with the at-large race, Patty, which is interesting because at our event last week, where you were the quiz master for our Colfax Indy Bash quiz show, some folks were talking to you about their run for this at-large seat. Who were you chatting with?
Well, I'd already been chatting with other people because it is so unusual to have a race like this come up. It's a 5-month commitment. It's really fast, gives people a chance to test it. But both Monica Martinez, who has been, she worked with the city and I think in Parks and Rec. She's doing so much on East Colfax. She was talking about it and she's been quoted in a few stories. But also Jake Brown was talking about joining the race. So he's been on CityCast.
So is Monica actually to talk about some affordable housing stuff that they were doing on East Colfax that she was working on with the bid down there. And Jake Brown has been on to talk about many things with us. I don't think it was this race though, however, so that's an interesting one. I mean, folks might know him from the cannabis space. He's also been he came to talk to us about fine dining. He's been in the comedy world. He's kind of an everyman. And so I think those are two really interesting folks that are part of this big race. I do want to explain because it's kind of complicated, right? So the Denver City Council at-large seats are in this interesting position right now because at-large councilperson Sarah Parody has announced, she announced earlier this summer that she was stepping down from her seat for health reasons. But this means Denver voters will be voting on her replacement in a special election in November. But then 5 months later in April, when Parody's term would normally expire, there'll be a normal election for that seat. So,
and there are two different ways the election works. So the short-term one, and she's resigning as of August 5th so that it can be an election November 3rd. That's the way the old at-large seats used to work, which is just winner takes all. Doesn't matter if you have a plurality, 21% can take it. Who knows? If as many people as we hear are running, 10% could take it. Then because of a change in the law that was approved by City Council, in April, when city council people are elected, at-large seats, now you have to get a majority. Because last time, I think the two people who were elected got it with 21%. Now, if no one gets the majority, there's a runoff, which is the same way all other city spots work. So the only difference is you won't be voting for two at-large people. There will be two slots you'll be voting for.
So before it was just like you're saying, it was a giant race for two seats. The people that got the most,
the top two.
And like you said, that could be a small percentage based on how many people were running. This is now at-large seat A and at-large seat B. And these are separate races. And you have to get the plurality. So that's the big difference here. And part of this issue, obviously, is Parody stepping down. There'll be the special election in November, but then the actual, or the regular election, I should say, for that seat is 5 months later. And this to me, it feels, I just wonder how you think voters will think about this because it's kind of complicated. Like, I don't doubt that people are, I know our audience, they're super engaged, but even I'm having trouble understanding, like, we're voting for someone, but 5 months later, we'll still be voting for that same seat. So they would be running again if they wanted to.
If they choose to.
But then there's obviously going to be other candidates. Do you think that this is going to hamper the turnout at all? Or at least like the voting in that particular race?
Well, the turnout is going to be huge because it's such a big election, November 3rd. Normally the municipal elections are in the spring, and they often have smaller turnout because they're big, they're not national elections or statewide elections. They're just municipal. So this one's going to have a lot of turnout, but will they be paying attention to this race when there's so much noise about other races, both CD1 and the state and feds?
Yeah, and ballot issues. Yeah, that's going to be huge. Yeah, I do just think, like, I imagine as a voter, I'd be like, wait, didn't I just, and then in April, I'll be like, wait, didn't I just vote on this 5 months ago? But it could be new people.
It's crazy. And with the range of people who look like they might be running, and it seems like a less drastic commitment, for example. If you're elected, it's 5 months of your life. You can see if you like it. But you could have 20 people running for this, and how they will wind up splitting the vote is going to really change who winds up in that spot. And will the incumbency really give them that much of an advantage come April? That's also hard to know.
Yeah. And, we do lean on that thought that the incumbent has the advantage, but like you're saying,
not in CD1 this time.
Right. I was going to say, and we'll get into that, the mail-out Kairos of it all here in a minute. But it's interesting to me that this could not just be an appointed position, like that Parity couldn't appoint a successor until that time, but that's just not how we do it at the municipal level.
Always been an election, so
that's
and I
how
think
it
it's
goes.
Actually great to give people get a chance to put their toe in the water.
Yeah, I think so too. I just worry there's going to be some confusion and especially with so many folks running. And so let's talk about that. So I do want to give a shout out. Elliot Wenzer, our regular contributor here on CityCast Denver, is the City Hall reporter for the Denver Post. She wrote this huge piece today about this particular race and focused a lot on the DSA of it all. So when Parity won this at-large seat initially, she was DSA endorsed. And within the last couple of years, DSA has gained a lot of ground and a lot of attention. And Melat Kiros was, I think, the greatest example, like you're saying, in CD1 of this upset. And now there is thought of like DSA has not endorsed anybody yet. Obviously, this is kind of early on. They haven't put forth a candidate, but there is a little bit of conversation of maybe this is the time when they push more into the municipal race with somebody, because Parity was kind of already that voice. And people elected her.
And if you don't rally behind one candidate, there are going to be so many candidates. And there might be several who identify with DSA principles, but not necessarily with the party. You can really splinter that vote. So if a party really wants to get someone in this office, they're going to have to bond behind them.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. And like you said, so many people. So I think there's 7 folks that have filed to run. Some folks that's stuck out to me, artist and the tribally enrolled native Christina Maldonado Badhand, who we've had on the show, Alfredo Reyes, who just stepped down from his longtime position leading the Latino Cultural Arts Center. These are 2 folks that are up for it. There was, I think, some usual suspects. Let's see. There's a lot.
And they were already on the ballot for April, right? I mean, they'd already said they were running in April. So the assumption is they will also run in August.
But they haven't necessarily announced. And that's
right, exactly.
To me where it gets kind of confusing, because typically when you're running for an election, there's quite a bit of lead time. And so, yes, they've already announced for that April election, but we're still talking about November 1st.
Right. Monica has said she's running. Jake is announcing today, I believe. So we haven't heard any other official people, but I think it's going to be a great cross-section of Denver that plunges in. People who've been stymied before, people who just think it's time for a change, people who think 5 months sounds okay. It's going to be wild.
And yeah, I am interested to see how the November race goes, but then I'm even more interested in the April race because we also have all these other seats up, like Paul Pazin. Mayor, yes, good point. Mayor, or I'm thinking about District 2, Bear Valley. Former police chief Paul Pazin is running. Tron Wells, who's longtime community member here in Denver, who works for the mayor right now. That's a race that I'm watching for sure. But there's just going to be so much going on in that race for the municipal stuff.
Right, and I agree. District 2, where Kevin Flynn, who actually led the charge to come up with a new at-large voting group, the new way to do it. He said, not fair not to have a majority when everyone else does. And you've got the runoff system in place. That area is going to be, Twan is great. I mean, Paul Pazin is a really interesting candidate. So that is going to be
very different candidate.
That's going to be a big referendum on that part of town.
Yeah, I'm interested to see too. Just because Bear Valley, I don't, we're nonpartisan here in the city. I would say it tends to lean more conservative. Kevin Flynn, for sure, is one of the more conservative leaning voices on council, for sure. But yeah, he's termed out. So that's just one of the races we'll be watching. There's so much going on. It was just like reading this today. I was like, oh my gosh, we have so much. Aren't you happy to be retired, Patty?
Hardly. I'm just thinking about all the stories I'm juggling to try to figure out writing. And I was laughing looking at when we did another big city council race, when we did speed dating interviews with the candidates. I'm like, we're going to have to do that again, because talk about speedy. August 5th, until November 3rd. So 2 months, not
2
even 2
months.
months.
That's less than 8 weeks. That's crazy.
Actually, 3 months. So it's August,
3
September, October.
But that's still in campaign world. That's
And
no
especially
time at all.
campaign world, when people have just put so much money into the primaries, like, I would hope money is not as much a factor in the municipal race, but it could be.
I'm curious to see how that shakes out too, because we did see a ton of money coming in the Democratic race. I think, in this last primary, in the primaries we're talking about, just overall, there was tons of money spent. Will we see that same kind of money in a municipal race is a good question.
Well, maybe not in CD1 where you see that money didn't make the difference.
The amount of flyers I got in the CD, I'd never seen anything like it. And again, we don't normally see that in city council races, but who knows? Could be a new era of money for Denver.
Well, certainly social media.
Yes.
I hope we won't get the same number of TV ads, but social media could be plastered.
Absolutely. Well, we'd love to hear what you think. What are you thinking with this special election and then with the 5-month later election? These city council at-large seats are huge because they really encompass the whole city. Let us know, 720-500-5418. Give us your thoughts. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we are talking about the ski industry and 2 rival neighborhoods. This episode is brought to you by the Colorado Lottery. Did you know Colorado is turning 150 this year? The Colorado Lottery is celebrating this big birthday with 3 new prize-packed scratch games. Check out the new $5 150th birthday scratch game loaded with cash prizes, the $3 winning country scratch game with a top prize of $30,000, and the $10 Colorado Gold Rush scratch game with a top prize of $250,000. That's $250,000 that could be yours. Did you know that every game from the Colorado Lottery directly gives back to Colorado's great outdoors? Since 1985, the Colorado Lottery has given more than $3.7 billion back to parks, trails, open spaces, and recreation projects across the state. Profits from the sales of these games are distributed to voter-selected groups like Great Outdoors Colorado, the Conservation Trust Fund, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, and more. Celebrate the Centennial State's 150th birthday this year with the Colorado Lottery's special celebration scratch games. Must be 18 to play. Visit coloradolottery.com to learn more. That's coloradolottery.com. This episode is brought to you by the Colfax Avenue Business Improvement District. Celebrate Indie Week on Colfax now through August 1st with shopping, dining, drinks, fitness, karaoke, and specials at independent businesses throughout the district. Pick up a limited edition Colfax Colorado 150 canvas tote bag at Savage O Coffee and Ice Cream to unlock discounts at participating businesses, including Voodoo Donuts, Satellite Bar, X Bar, DNVR Bar, Ma's Kitchen, and more. Dude, you can even stop by the legendary Bound by Design or see the fab folks at Lemur Inc. for a Colfax flash tattoo. What? Enjoy karaoke at Pete's Satire Lounge and explore Ogden Street businesses such as Balanced Route and the Corner Beat. Visit colfaxab.com/indie-week for the latest participating businesses, tote discounts, events, and Fax Pass specials. That's colfaxab.com/indie-week. Okay, we're back. Alterra, a huge ski resort company here in Colorado. They employ 400 people. They're the folks behind the Icon Pass. They are leaving their Rhino headquarters for downtown. And interestingly, they're leaving Zeppelin Station in what Kyle Zeppelin of Zeppelin Station said was a civil war of neighborhoods. Reporting from Business Den found that the company, Alterra, had maybe sort of been looking at, I don't know if I want to say threatening, but looking at leaving Colorado for Utah, which is new reporting from Business Den, which could explain why the Denver Downtown Development Authority is now giving Alterra a $7 million low-interest loan if it moves within the city into upper downtown. One of the really interesting parts of the story that I found was that other DDA applicants have waited months to be told whether they were going to get those funds, but Alterra applied July 20th and was awarded the loan on July 22nd. Patty, is this fishy?
No, it's business as usual. And in fact, on Monday morning, the Colorado Economic Development Office had an early meeting before the regularly scheduled meeting to talk about, they didn't say it was Altera. I believe they called it, the code word was Odysseus, but a outdoor sports and recreation related company in Denver that was talking about maybe leaving for another state, and Utah was certainly what was mentioned, and everything about it fit Altera. And it's not a surprise that there would be competition between Colorado and Utah. There has been forever. I mean, we saw it with Sundance. That went to Colorado. But we'd already lost the outdoor rec show. So to fight for this, for Altera, big employment, big industry. I mean, it is a huge industry for Colorado. And what wound up happening is another $7 million loan, this one from the state, which very similar terms to the DDA loan that was decided very quickly, as well as some other things to keep them here. That was what was decided. So clearly, Altera is having a discussion very quickly with its corporate discussion at the high level. They have their CEO left. They're really making a decision whether to stay, not just in Rhino, but do they stay in Colorado at all? And I would say, if they're going to stay in Colorado, they're going to move from Rhino. Sorry to Kyle Zeppelin, but that development has had issues, and certainly other people have left that development. So it's not just Altera that's looking at it.
And that was the most recent story about Zeppelin Station, was that property was in receivership. The Zeppelins just got it back. And
Kyle Zeppelin fought to get it back, which is great. But in the meantime, most of the restaurants have left. Remember when it was going to be Pretty Girl, have the dinosaur issue?
Clever Girl, yes.
Clever Girl.
The animatronic dinosaur bar, yes.
Yeah, so it's tough. And with, say, $14 million in low-cost loans now coming from the state and the city to Altera to set up a state-of-the-art office in a downtown building, it's got to be pretty tempting.
I mean, and like you're saying, we're learning about this DDA loan of $7 million, and now the state is, this combined $14 million is state and city money to keep this business, which again employs 400 people, but also is a huge part of our identity as a state. Like you're saying, we lost the outdoor show. Now we have the outside festival. Like, we're still trying to retain that, but losing that company, I could see where beyond, I mean, that's a big job loss. It's also like, if that company wasn't in Colorado anymore, that's just a huge part of who we are in the ski industry.
It is. And I mean, and we have Vail Resorts, that's in Broomfield. We do have the Outside Festival, which is growing. Colorado Outdoor Recreation Office is working really hard to bring everything it can in and to expand the Outside Festival. So keeping Altera here makes sense. And that is what the Office of Economic Development does. It tries to maintain businesses here, makes them grow, but also lure them here. So to fight the evils of Utah is not a surprise. They've been doing that for decades.
And I should say Business Den reported that they reached out to the Utah governor's office, they reached out to the mayor's office, and they reached out to Altera and did not get responses yet. So
yeah, Business Journal is the one that broke the story Monday morning about
Business Journal.
The Office of Economic Development after Business Den had been breaking the leave Zeppelin Station. So I'm guessing Colorado will be successful in keeping Altera here. It is not a surprise that any corporation these days would push every button they have to get a better deal.
What do you think this means for the area people call Rhino? Is this a sign of bigger problems for the area, or do you think this is specific to, I mean, because that's a huge tenant.
It's a huge tenant, but that's Rhino seems to be doing pretty well. I mean, I wasn't at UMS this weekend. I don't know if you were. And they have a big celebration coming up August 7th for their 20th anniversary of being an arts district. I think Rhino is doing fine. It's much more geared towards hospitality, restaurants, smaller retail, and a hotel. So a lot of the bigger office things, and apartment complexes, but a lot of the bigger office things just haven't worked. And we've got to remember where Zeppelin Station is located, which is it's not quite as walkable to everything over on Larimer or even on Brighton. It's in a little backwater that makes it a little less attractive, especially if the building itself doesn't have the kind of tenants you want to spend time with. It doesn't have a big food hall.
And I will say, I did not make it to UMS this weekend because it was so hot. I was at Blucifer in the evenings, which was fantastic on South Broadway. But my husband played UMS and he said the layout was really cool. It's different than South Broadway, but he said there was tons of people there. I mean, obviously, two festivals at the same time is a hard competition in general, but I don't think that they had any trouble continuing on that festival, which may help bring some new identity to Rhino as well when it comes to connecting with the arts and, right. Which has been a big
knock on wood, that was a great success because they do have other projects in the works. They've got money committed. They're still working on other mural plans. They were doing much more with live art. So let's hope Rhino continues to really boom.
My only suggestion is we need to reevaluate putting music festivals in late July in parking lots because my husband said their gear was melting. Like it was so hot. And that was just a big deterrent for me. I was like, I just can't bring a 5-year-old to stand on concrete or asphalt.
With no shade.
No shade. That was the other thing, was the shade issue. So, but by all accounts, I heard both festivals did fantastic, which to me is great for Denver because more festivals, the better. I don't know.
The more is more. Ideally, more spread out through the summer, but we'll still take it as long as they didn't really pull people from one festival to another and harm that.
Yeah. Well, Patty, thank you so much for joining me. This was great.
My pleasure. We can bet on Altera, but I will be guessing it's going to be very soon relocating to Upper Downtown, not to Salt Lake City.
And listeners, please stick around. I have a conversation that I taped earlier with Rebecca Green, Executive Director of Mothers Against Drunk Driving, to talk specifically about the 4 a.m. bars hours legislation that City Council is going to be looking at. And she gave us a totally different perspective, which I found really interesting. So that is next. Rebecca Green, Executive Director of Mothers Against Drunk Driving. Welcome to CityCast Denver.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, Rebecca, last week there was a shooting in Southeast Denver at a bar and nightclub called Ultra Lounge that left one person dead, 8 injured. The nightclub's liquor and entertainment licenses have been suspended. They were found to have hired unlicensed security guards, and the bar itself was not properly licensed. But they also found that they had not done enough to prevent violence at their nightclub. I'm bringing this up because this is the most recent news, but you're here with me today to talk about this proposal that in part looks at extending some bar and nightclub hours to 4 a.m., which Matt opposes. Rebecca, can you talk about how this situation at this nightclub ties into this proposal that City Council will be voting on next week?
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, there's a portion in this proposal that talks about how to improve safety at nightclubs, entertainment businesses that provide alcohol. And I think for us, the concern really is about extending that. We have seen in other states and cities that when they do extend bar hours, they also see an increase in crime. This proposal, as presented, kind of talks about this as a theory that somehow by extending hours, they can reduce sort of the crowding issue that they see at the end of the night. And I think this is an example, the nightclub shooting is an example of where that didn't work out, where this was something that happened at 12:30 at night. There are already issues in how some bad actors are operating their business, and this is a perfect example of almost too little, too late for what this proposal is trying to do. For us, the actual proposal, the language included, doesn't include enough about safety. It's not clear. It's really sort of nebulous in how they talk about what the requirements would be. And it puts a lot of onus on business owners, which I do think business owners need to adhere to what the rules are. And that wasn't happening in this case. But also the city kind of needs to step up a little bit around what they're doing to provide safety and security for the community. And I don't know that this proposal really highlights how they would do that.
It's interesting because, like you said, this shooting happened at 12:30. This proposal we're looking at is looking to extend sort of past the usual 2 a.m. last call when folks are, sort of put out. The idea is to stagger the let out times, or at least give more space, I think, is what I take from this. And I'm a person that grew up here in Colorado in the early 2000s. I was 21, and this was a problem then. I mean,
yes,
big groups of folks being put out onto the street as a bar or nightclub closes, a lot of chaos. My mother has worked in an ER for 52 years. This is a regular occurrence on weekends where she just sees a lot of young men in particular getting into fights outside of bars and end up in the ER. So you're saying that even if that time is expanded, that doesn't necessarily, it's too nebulous to address the actual issue of stuff like that, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure that anybody is just going to slowly trickle out of a bar. Anybody who's been to a bar at 2 a.m. knows that the only reason you're leaving is because you're being asked to leave. And there are some points of implementation of maybe training opportunities for staff where maybe they're not flipping the light switch on and yelling at people and kind of aggravating everyone before they leave. But more importantly, there's nothing that states that that's just not going to move to 4 a.m. instead of 2 a.m. because there's nothing in the bill that even kind of talks about what are the steps to ensure that you have that sort of flow of people. How do you choose who is being asked to leave first? And so it really leaves a lot up to human nature, and human nature in a bar at 2 a.m. is going to look very similar to human nature in a bar at 4 a.m.
Sure. I think what I was taking from the legislation is that they aren't serving alcohol after 2 a.m.
Correct.
They're just allowing them to be open later. And I've read some quotes from business owners in various coverage saying, well, I don't sell food, so I'm not going to be making money during this time, or I don't have the staff to staff for an additional 2 hours. What do you all think is the idea behind this, just having this 2-hour period? We'll get into the sobering up part in a minute, because I do want to talk about that illusion of that idea. But I guess, what do you think, I guess if they were allowed to serve food, would that make a difference? What do you think is going on there with the legislation of just keeping things open for 2 hours longer, even if alcohol is not involved?
I mean, we have worked on this issue in a variety of different ways at the state level. And I think there are some entities that have been pushing for this for 12 years. I don't think they've ever made a clear case as to why they want it. Beyond what we can talk about with the safety issue, it also leaves kind of a marketing question, is there's no real market research added in, or market demand even included into their argument for why they would want to do this. Our concern really is, what would they then be selling? Are they selling $22 water bottles to make up the cost of what it would amount to them having to keep extra hours of security, extra hours of staff, extending or shifting the hours of the cleaning crew now having to come in? Most places cannot then take on the additional costs of opening a snack bar now at 4 in the morning or 2 in the morning. So our concern also is that what is to preclude someone from all of a sudden having drink specials at 1 a.m. and kind of stacking the bar so that it offsets the cost of what it would cost them to stay open, those additional 2 hours. There's nothing in the bill that even talks about how this benefits the market, or that there's even a demand for it.
Yeah, that's the interesting part to me. And also, I want to touch on something you just said, which is if a bar did want to start serving food, that's a whole other licensing conversation that they would have to have, which is not included in this. Well, and like you mentioned, that this issue has come up at the State House many times. In my preliminary research, I think I found around 10 times this has come to the State House in the last 12 years. Do you know what the push is behind it, if it isn't necessarily something that is super easy for bars and nightclubs themselves to find value in?
I think there are very few bars and nightclubs that might benefit, but they aren't maybe being as thoughtful or truthful about what they intend to do with that extra time. And so I think they've been very creative over the years to highlight all of the different ways that they attempt to increase bar hours. And as you have seen, it's failed every time. And I think the big piece around that is we just don't have the traffic infrastructure in this city to make a change like that effectively and safely. We don't have enough law enforcement officers to manage a change like that. The later you go into the evening or earlier in the morning, the more people you're going to have on the road. Shift workers are changing shift at that time. You have student athletes that are getting up early for early morning trainings before school. You've got people that are heading up to the mountains to ski or heading out early to DIA. We see a larger population of people on the roadway during that time too. And we've never found in each of those efforts, there has not been a single attempt to address any of those issues. Now, if we were in a city that had 24-hour transportation, that went to every corner of the city, this would be a very different conversation. But we just simply do not have that. We don't even have anything close to that. So I think that's the piece that always strikes me is in each of these cases and these attempts, there's this push that they say people want this, people want to stay out. But also younger people are not drinking alcohol at rates that our generation certainly did. And so while there may be a push for some people to stay out later, there's not enough in any of these conversations to say, well, what are they going to be doing during that time? What are the activities? And the only one that has come up is alcohol.
I mean, we don't even have we don't have 24-hour diners anymore. We don't even have the places that I mean, you could go to the Taco Bell drive-through, but you know what I mean? It's
not now. Not with the lettuce thing, but no, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Like just thinking about what is there to do, or it's very difficult. And then you kind of touched on this, but I always feel like New York is brought up as this well, New York's bars are open later, but what you're saying is, yeah, but New York has a subway system and a bus system that for the most part serves that need to driving is not the first thing that most people I know that live in New York do to go somewhere.
Right.
Or cabs or Ubers or whatever. But.
And New York has a really interesting case too, where they have some counties that have later hours and some counties that close earlier. And what you see in those counties that have later hours, they have, of course, higher rates of DUI, higher rates of fatality and injury. And then the counties surrounding that have higher rates of fatality or injury, whether or not they're staying open late or not, because people do not often stay in the same place, live in the same place where they party. So in downtown Denver is a great example. You're going to have people coming in from all of the metro area, and they're going to have to go home to, and we just don't have the infrastructure to get them home safely without kind of the temptation to drive themselves.
I was one of those people. I lived at I-25 in Hampton, and I went to Lodo or I went to Capitol Hill when I was younger. And I want to talk about this a little bit so we can get into a little bit of the biology of this. But I've been in recovery for 20 years. But back when I was a drinker and a partier, I'm not proud of this, but I definitely will be honest and say I had bartender friends who would let me stay after 2 a.m. Closing time to drink water and, quote, sober up over the span of an hour or two before I left the bar, and regrettably drove myself or others home. I was really fortunate to have not hurt myself or other people. But there's actual science that says that that's not how blood alcohol levels work, right? Can you explain that? Even if they're open for 2 hours and serving water for 2 hours, we're not sobering up a bunch of people, right?
Right. And so on average, it takes about 2 hours per drink to sober up. So if you have been in a bar from, I don't know, let's say 10 to 2, you probably have had more than one drink. People who have one drink tend to be at home earlier. And so if you consider, locally, the average BAC for DUI in Colorado is sitting at about 0.18. If you waited 2 hours, you'd still be at a 0.15, which is nearly twice the legal limit. So this idea that somebody would be sobering up during that time, people wake up in the morning and get DUIs from the night before because they think they've gone home and they think they've had enough water, enough food, but truly the only thing that sobers somebody up is time. So if you wake up and you're hungover, depending on the severity of that hangover, you're still impaired and not safe to drive. So if you're still feeling the effects of alcohol, you're still not safe to drive. And frankly, in Colorado, we've seen an increase between 2024 and 2025. We saw a 12% increase in fatalities. Denver announced last year that they had the highest rate of fatalities in over 10 years. And we're asking for these changes, but we're also ignoring the fact that we're going in the wrong direction in terms of fatalities and injuries and the numbers on average, we see about 16,000-ish DUI arrests each year. That's not everyone. So there are still people that are driving impaired and they just didn't get caught, because almost everyone has a story like yours where you have a night, you had too much, you ended up being the least drunk, so you drove everybody home. And that's dangerous. I mean, we're seeing that on the roadways. We serve victims and survivors every day whose lives have been forever impacted by somebody's choice to get behind the wheel of a car after consuming. And luckily now we have things like rideshare. We have things, opportunities for people to plan ahead so they don't have to take their car downtown. Like, when we were younger, there weren't opportunities like that. There didn't exist technology like that. And now it's sort of become more commonplace. But even with, moving the hours to 4 a.m., you're going to see fewer rideshare drivers. Why? Because most people are asleep at 4 a.m. That's the goal. It's like they should be in bed. But we do see fewer drivers. A lot of people take their last ride at 2 a.m.
No, I didn't think about that. You were describing the traffic that changes between a 2 a.m. and a 4 a.m. And that is when folks that have not been drinking are getting up to do other things. That adds more people to the road. Mm-hmm. I never thought about that. So City Council is looking at they've been looking at this. They're doing another reading of this and voting on it next week. It will be next week. What do you hope that they take into consideration that they just haven't, or that, I mean, again, because you've seen this go through the state level and fail several times. What would you hope that City Council looks at when really thinking about how this could impact the city?
Well, one, I think there are other elements in this legislation that make sense, and we would hate to hold up those pieces. I think this 4 a.m. piece should be removed from this particular legislation until we really can have the time to get all the players at the table. We think it's just not ready to roll out, and so they should just pull this portion of the legislation until they have a better plan.
Well, we will be watching to see how City Council handles this in the coming weeks. Rebecca, thank you so much for joining me.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having us. We really appreciate it.
That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. If you enjoyed this show, why not take a minute to tell Utah Governor Spencer Cox about us? Rate the show wherever you get your podcasts, follow us on Instagram and TikTok, and subscribe to our morning newsletter at denver.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye-bye. Oh, hey, Denver, it's Bree. Every day on this podcast, I try to ask questions that no one else in town is asking. I mean, I've been in the local news world for a long time because I'm nosy, but it's also because I love learning new stuff about our city, our people, and our culture, and I love sharing that knowledge with anyone who will listen. Ask my friends. I get real excited about Denver. And I think you do too. So if this podcast has ever sparked your curiosity or given you something smart to share at a family dinner or with your book club or your bandmates, here's what you should do. Support this show by becoming a member of our CityCast Denver Neighbors program. Our membership program costs just $10 a month or $100 a year, and it comes with some great benefits. But most importantly, your membership helps make sure I can keep being nosy and getting you the answers that actually matter. I think being curious about our city makes us all better neighbors. Go to membership.citycast.fm/Denver to read about member benefits and join now. That's membership.citycast.fm/Denver. Thanks for your support.